Last week, I admitted that I can be a bit of a Scrooge in the holiday season. About 8 of you came and said, yeah, me too. You didn't say, yeah, me too. You said, yeah, me too, because some of us are. But this week, I want you to know this is my favorite part of the whole holiday, the whole thing, the whole Christmas story. The actual baby, not that big of a deal. But Mary singing, that's a big deal to me. Why? Well, she sort of sings to herself, and that's my favorite because who does not make up songs for yourself when you're at home doing chores? Like you're just washing the dishes and la, 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 la. I know all of you, some of you, I've seen you at the red light singing to yourself. You're probably making up lyrics because none of us memorize lyrics anymore. Terrell, it was you. I caught you a couple months ago. Yeah, we do that. We make up lyrics. Some of us, we talk to the dog. When you have a dog, you have the dog voice. You do. You all do this, and you make things up. So to me, having Mary sing this song to herself, no one else is around. This is just so realistic. She just seems so human that she's singing to her unborn child. So younger Mary, just a few years before, let's go turn the clock back and just imagine her a few years before singing nursery rhymes and jumping rope with her friends, and they would get together and have, they maybe did little cootie catchers, and they would talk up stories about what their future was going to be like, and they would just have great imaginations. Or, take it back even farther, when she was a little girl, having little tea parties with her stuffed animals, and, she, oh, Mr. Camel, would you like another muffin for breakfast? That's what kids do. They have imaginations. They tell stories. They sing little songs. So now she's 16 or so. We're just going to give her somewhere in the middle, 16 or so, not quite an adult, but definitely on the way to being the mother of this, something so holy. And we catch this glimpse of something humanizing and personal. In this song, we get a peek into her own imagination. And what we find is something that you don't expect really from a 16-year-old. It's deeply mature, it's thoughtful, it's very public-oriented. We hear in her song, there's a feeling, of course, as close as a mother can be, but there's also a vision that is as political as any prophet has ever been. And so whatever you sing about when no one is around, that can be a secret to you. But when Mary sings to soothe the restlessness of her unborn baby, it's so deep, these 3 verses. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the first verse. Tom, I'm putting you on the spot again. Go back to that first part where Pat actually sang the first line right there. Yeah. She sings in here this thing about her lowly state. I don't know if this is her class or if it's her guilt, but she sings of her purpose. This is deep. She sings about, I will not let my past define me. I will not let my imperfections get in the way of God's perfect plans. And this is not arrogance. She's not being arrogant about her future, but she knows my child will not grow up ashamed for where he came from. That cycle stops right now. Parents, did you make that decision for yourself? Whatever it was in your past, that's not going to come into this new house. This is what she's singing about. She says, whatever low state I come from, call it shame, call it poverty, whatever it is, whatever she feels, she says, you child, you're going to know that you are loved unconditionally. He is loved because he is hers, and they belong to God, and God is love. The next verse, Tom. She sings about in the next verse how, and it would be so easy. She probably in the Sunday school she grew up with, the lesson she heard over and over, or the lesson that so many people catch in religion is, if you do the right things, then God will bless you. Or if you believe the right things, like believe in what's in her belly, then you'll go to heaven or something. If you follow my son Jesus, then your life will be better or else. That's the worn-out, childish religion that so many people get caught up in or get stuck to that point. But instead, Mary sings an alternate vision. She says, this is the way the world is going to work to her. This is wisdom. It is mercy, or call it grace, or call it renewed balance, just whatever stability you need in your heart. She says mercy is somehow linked to awe, or to wonder, or to the fear and trembling of seeing the truth. That's her claim. That mercy is there connected to something like awe. And I don't know how a teenager would know this other than that she just like met an angel, and that must have been a pretty awe-inspiring moment. But her claim to us, or maybe she's just teaching her child, or maybe she's just telling herself to believe something. She needs her own support there. In this verse, she says that real healing, it's not something you earn. It's not a game of like get enough tickets, and you get this other prize. No, real healing, what some people call salvation, it's not a game. Real healing or wholeness is somehow related to coming to grips with the depth of reality, facing your own soul. You can't heal until you see the real you. Real healing comes when you realize the weight of love. When you realize that how much someone can love you and how real love is, that's a step to healing. Real healing is sinking into a mystery that's overwhelming. You thought you understood the world at some point, and then you realize, oh my gosh, it is so much more loving and deep and connected and united. Your Bible probably, instead of awestruck, it probably has the word fear. And in English, that word it's just such a poor word to describe this. Fear means overwhelmed by the truth, the power of truth and the power of beauty. So anytime you see the word fear in the Bible, overwhelmed by the power of truth and beauty. So in other words, if you want mercy or grace or growth or enlightenment or contentedness, whatever you call it, Mary knows, and she's going to raise her child to know, that there is a love, a true love in the world, a true, beautiful, powerful love so far beyond our pride or our guilt. And some of us have experienced that. Some of us know that's true. Some of us know the beauty of that love that holds all things together. And some of us know what it's like when that love sets us free. Her next verse, and this is where things go from emotional and spiritual to, can I say that at church? Who am I going to offend? Some of you. That's probably the answer here. In this time, this is right there when King Herod, like what we know about this first Herod is he's willing to slaughter a bunch of children, like slaughter a bunch of infants. Do you think that's the first bad thing he did? You don't get to that point without doing a bunch of other junks. Okay, so she's growing up, she's a child in this time when her leaders are willing to do things like that. I'm sure her leaders are, I don't know if they're willing to lie and abuse and cheat and put out revenge and cruelty and steal things or threaten Christmas shutdowns in order to get technology contracts in China. I don't know what King Herod was willing to do, but something. But just consider, instead of Mary saying this, just consider if I went out on a street corner and started singing, rip down the wealthy from their thrones and give power to the people. What do you think would happen? How long would I last there with my little bullhorn? Because the bullhorn people, they never say that, right? What if I said, feed the poor, and to do it, tax the hell out of the rich? Would I go very far with that message? If you put them together, combine them, let's say, and if I just held up a sign that said, eat the rich. I have a friend with a hat that says, eat the rich. He wears it when he's skiing. I love skiing with him when he has that hat. You get on a lift with someone and they see it and they don't know what's going to happen. What would they call me? Would they call me communist, left-wing, you hate this country? You know? What'd they call Mary? Do you think Mary heard the same kinds of criticisms that I would have heard? I mean, women never get criticized as much as men. Young women certainly never have to deal with the amount of criticism that the world puts on them for anything they do or say. So of course she ended up with criticism. So maybe that's why she kept this song secret, or maybe she's just already used to the criticism around that whole virgin thing. I'm not going to get into that. You can go read the New York Times article this week. It totally skips the most important point in that whole controversy, but I'll be controversial enough here in a second, so we can skip that. But Mary is so used to so much criticism around that. And so maybe she did sing this in public. Maybe this is a private little moment in young, but then she sang it to Jesus as he grew up. Maybe she taught it to Luke later when he was doing research for his biography on Jesus. Maybe Mary's mother sang this same song to her. I know those things kind of go down in generations. Maybe we have a Mary. Do you know what your name means? You don't? So Miriam is the same name. Miriam, what does your name mean? One who comes out of the darkness. Or rebel. Punk is what is like a modern translation of that. Like rebellious would be a fine thing. So, I mean, Miriam is the Hebrew version of Mary. And so you think that Jesus' grandma named her child that for some kind of a reason. So maybe Mary's own mother sang a song like this to her and it just filtered down. Maybe Jesus knew this song. I mean, all of you know the song that your mother sang to you. Maybe he sang this with the disciples or to the women who were there with the disciples. Who knows? Or Luke has the choice whether to put this in his book or not. Before this, we learned that Luke wrote this book. He's commissioned by a wealthy politician to write this book. Why would he put this in there? A little zinger? Or did the politician, did it go over his head? Luke was probably thick-skinned enough. He's a grown-up man. He's an educated doctor. He's probably dealt with criticism. He can put that in there. But the early church, why did they keep it in there? Luke could have written this and they could have scratched it out, a little edit. But the early church, the regular people, they decided this song needed to stay in the Bible. Even some of them probably worried, no, this is too divisive. We can't read this around Christmas. So I have no doubt that some of them were scared to promote Mary's song. But overall, they must have known that the love at the heart of our universe, the love that pulses between people, is the same love that calls on us to care for each other compassionately and systematically. That love calls on us to refuse the power plays of Herod and Pilate and Nero and Elon and so many others. That love calls on us to prioritize the poor and the hungry and the marginalized. They knew that in the early church, and Mary knew that. Why did they know that? Well, there's no way to avoid it. For Mary, she is a woman. She's not even a woman. She's still a girl, and so she is property. She's about to get married, so she's going to become property of someone else. Women had so few rights. Their safety was always at risk. In addition, she was poor. She was oppressed by a usurping government and a complacent church. She grew up hearing these Hebrew prophets calling for so much better leadership and better treatment for the vulnerable. She probably dreamed of going to school, which she couldn't do. She watched her neighbors suffer for problems that just were so curable, so easy to fix in a world that was organized better. She knew that the land itself had such promise, and yet so many powerful people just used it as a commodity. She knew in her time, surrounding everything in her life, so many things were so broken, and the only thing that could heal it all would be an act of God. And she also knew that God calls on us to address those problems, and she did it with the provocative imagination of a rebellious teenager. So what about the Marys today? Just imagine a 16-year-old girl today. Imagine this story. What would that girl be like? What would she look like? This is a Middle Eastern girl, so let's say she's a person of color, but she probably is held to standards that the normative white culture. Given our culture today, she might be, 16-year-old. She's probably questioning her gender. Their gender? I don't know. So let's just go with Mary. Stick with it. She's going to choose that name. She's probably been a victim of some kind of sexual harassment, maybe not traumatizing, but certainly uncomfortable. She's poor without any chance of getting ahead, so there's no way that she chooses to go into debt for college. She has no reason to trust her leaders, really any of them, which is too bad because some really do care about her. But the media is such a mess. Well, how does she know who to follow? She might like her therapist, but why do all her friends need so many therapists? What is wrong with a world that needs so much mental health support? And why does her school not appreciate the good teachers? She likes her good teachers even if she doesn't like school. And why does she know all the names of the makeup colors, but she doesn't know the names of the birds? Who taught her that? And why does all her food come in packages, if you can call it food, and. Imagine the most normal 16-year-old girl in our society today. If she got pregnant, what happens? Does she have access to health care? I don't mean abortion. I mean just health care. Or is her insurance going to get gutted and privatized? Does she feel safe walking to school? Does she feel safe in the presence of men or law enforcement or anybody? Everywhere in her life, her time and her attention are monetized. Everywhere in her life, the world seems so fake. Like, where's the real? Everywhere she looks, everyone she sees, every time she slows down, the world seems so broken that only an act of God could heal it all. And this is just a regular 16-year-old girl in America. So if she's regular, she doesn't go to church, and yet she still knows that it would take something sacred to put all these pieces back together in any way that makes sense. So what does this mean? 16-year-old Mary, 16-year-old today. For starters, it means whoever is in charge of all the stuff that's brought us here, I'm going to choose a different wisdom than what they have brought us to. It means whatever has led to this crumbling of civility, I choose love instead. Mary's third verse means that whatever values have given rise to the ways of this world, she says tear them apart. Build something new, build something different, lean into something else, lean into love. In order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to dream, we need love instead of whatever has propped up this. Now, that does not mean necessarily that we will be able to resist every kind of injustice. You can love all you want. You're not going to win every battle. We may not be able to create new patterns in our world right away, but we can love one another. In the sphere of your influence, to make your homes a safe haven, you can commit to radical kindness. You can tend to the soil now so that one day those seeds will flourish. They can ignore the loud. You can dismantle the proud. You can subvert the powerful. And we can lift up the humble and listen to the wise and empower the peacemakers. Is that too political for church? If so, you can send the email to Mary, because I'm busy this week.